An intro just makes my blood boil, man.
Yeah, it's pretty hardcore.
Yeah. It
It's
just gets
cool.
me fucking going every time.
How
Matt,
you doing,
Ehret,
guys?
great. Happy Halloween.
Happy Hallows Eve. Yes, happy.
Yeah, that's
Eve.
right. That's right. And this is All Hallows Eve, right?
Yes.
And then what's All Hallows Day for?
Ooh, that's a mind bender. I never thought about that.
Well, that was the holiday back in the day, right? That was the
I
big,
guess
like,
so. What do
yeah.
you know anything about the details? Because I've not thought about that really. I've always taken it for just the chocolate eating day or night that it was.
Yeah.
What's the
It was
deal?
one of those things that I totally looked into, and now that I don't need to know it, I've forgotten.
Okay, well, as all useless trivia that makes it sound smart at parties should go into that trash bit at some point to make space for more useful things.
That's right. Well, I think it's All Saints Day.
Right.
I think that's what it is. And then this is the night before. And then, like, I don't know, you're supposed to get all saintly and, like, beg forgiveness for all your sins. The night before is supposed to get a little wacky, I guess.
Oh, really? You just sort of let out. It's like the Apollo Dionysian thing, where you're just like Dionysius having all of your demons from your subconscious forces just like play and run the show, and then at night and then in day you're just this repentant penitent. I'm sorry, right. I'm such a perverted slob. I'm so sorry.
So you
just like vacillate.
You get your demon on the night before, and that's what turned into costumes and stuff. That's my understanding of it.
Well, guarantee if we survive nuclear war and we make it to next Halloween, I will fully know the answer to this deep question.
I'm actually shocked, Matt. I assume there'd be like a whole cabal of conspiracy that you'd be aware of behind Halloween.
Oh man,
we got you, man. We got you.
You got me. I slipped.
Yeah. 1 point Superspreaders.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to bring up the poll. So I took a paranormal poll.
I heard you're telling me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here we are. Which of these spooky subjects is real? We will reveal the results and ask Matthew Ehret which one he believes in on the show Halloween 10 p.m. EST. Now that we're here, choices are alien abduction or UFOs that are, when you say, like, do you believe in UFOs? We all know what we mean. Ghosts, Bigfoot, or demon possession. I'll say what I voted for was Bigfoot.
Okay. All right. Demon possession really won the show, eh? Whoa.
Yeah.
Look at that one.
It's, I guess, not so shocking considering current events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. Rain, where would you throw down on that one? If you had to pick one.
Just one?
Yeah, you got to pick one.
Wow. That's a tough one. I'd probably lean towards Bigfoot as well.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Matthew, your vote?
I guess if when I'm reading alien abduction, of course, I'm thinking MK Ultra human guinea pigs. So in that case, I'll go with alien abduction, aka MK Ultra human guinea pigs.
So, like, the phenomenon is a real phenomenon. It's just not what they think it is.
Yeah, that's my vote. That's what I think.
Right.
And definitely there's unidentified stuff, natural and human-made in the skies of the world over the centuries. That's a fact. So that I think I'm happy with my choice.
Yeah. You gotta be happy with your webcam.
Yeah, it's a
picture's
great webcam.
Gorgeous.
It's you can almost see the dry skin. I'm not used to thinking about every elemental defect I have in my pores.
Me too.
But
I got a new webcam today, and it cuts in close. Yours has a nice wide angle. Mine cuts in close, and I'm like, oh, I got a little bit of a zit. Oh my god.
You look good. You look good.
50-year-old wrinkles, but it's shocking when you get this high def shit going.
All right, so Rain, you're the one man out with you lack a high end 4K webcam. We got to get you one. That'll be the next job.
That's why I have this. This is a bonkers deal that I saw on YouTube. They're like, this is insane for this price. So I grabbed this, and we're gonna get. I've been testing out. This is the second one I've tested, and this is a keeper for now. And then we're gonna set up right back there. You can vaguely see a blanket on a couch, and that's going to be the podcast. And the two of us will sit there. And I'll have webcams on tripods. And then I got this light as well.
Fancy
We'll have
schmancy.
lights, two cameras. We'll sit in the same place and have an actual podcast studio.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the problem is you're in the Yukon and nobody else lives up there. So beyond the two of you guys, you can't have guests really unless you...
There's like 39,983 other people up here.
All right, maybe you get a couple of guests. Fine.
Yeah.
All right.
we know a couple people would be fascinating right away. There's one guy, I think you know who I'm thinking of, Rain, that love to get on here, but he's all like ex special forces and says he can't really come on and talk.
Well, he doesn't.
We're
know
working
about
on
you,
him.
He doesn't know about your green masks, so
that's right.
I'm sure you can figure something out.
He doesn't know that nobody watches us, so it doesn't really matter anyway. It's a safe space. But we're also up to other underhanded tricks. So you can have tricks and treats on Halloween, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
how about a
you
trick?
gotta a little
How about a
pleasure,
trick?
a little.
Oh. We have got on tonight the Ice Spades crew, the entire Holmes family.
Hey, wow.
Popping
Hello.
in for a Halloween treat.
Greetings.
Bombing us from Alberta.
Hey,
We
right
can't
on.
hear you guys. We assume you're screaming and making noise over there.
Sorry.
Yeah. We just wanted to pop in for us, the relationship with Ice Spades, with Mr. Holmes has turned into a little bit of a thing. We got At Home with the Holmes. This little spot. We're going to check in with the Holmes on a regular basis because this is like the most awake family in Canada. And you guys have had some contact as well. So we wanted to bring them on and say hi. And how's your Halloween out there, Holmes?
Good. We're actually the dark house this year because we had to work late. So we wanted to make sure that we had our ducks in a row to be able to show proof of life of Matt's books on our kitchen table.
See that? Wow.
We didn't want to partake in the Aleister Crowley horror legacy for this season. And then just an opportunity to be able to actually say thank you to Matthew and Cynthia for their work that they've done. We find ourselves trying to combat the culture war as much as we possibly can in Alberta. And hopefully this is at least one degree of separation where perhaps maybe even Matthew and Cynthia would be willing to come out here and speak to some groups because we are trying to update as much as we can with what is going on in the world, and Alberta might be one of the last frontiers for the good fight. And we are just very humbled and honored. And we've been chatting with your mom and your grandma in the chat room. So.
I'm not gonna lie, the best moment was talking to like Mama Ehret. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We literally have family podcast night, Ehret, where we literally just watch your videos together as a clan, and it's the best work I've seen in my life.
Yeah, everything. Rising Tide Foundation, CanadianPatriot.org. We don't have the anti-China psyop, but we do. We purchased them, but they're just not on the table for proof of life. But
oh man, you guys are such a healthy, integrated family. Oh wow, jeez.
Yeah, it's pretty rare we find these days. That's what we hear.
No, that's wonderful, and yeah, the Aleister Crowley stuff is definitely not something that you should like listen to before bedtime. Nightmares will possibly be induced, so it's good that you guys are going to avoid that part of this chat today. But no, it's super nice meeting you guys face to face, and sure enough, yeah, we should definitely chat, and maybe we could arrange something for Alberta. Yeah, I've
your next tour.
Yeah, yes,
absolutely. It would be a good idea. I mean, we're trying to run a culture war thing. I mean, we're trying to pick up our citizenship as much as possible, even though our faith might be shaken in political institutions to a degree. But I mean, it's one of those, you know, you can ignore the consequences of reality. So you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of reality.
Yeah.
These are some of the downstream things that are going on. So we just felt that if we could, you know, touch base with Jay, promote his work, touch base with you, promote your work, and find, so, you know, we have an AGM that we're about to do this upcoming week. It's the largest in Canadian history. We got 3,700 people that are going to be attending. Not a federal AGM has done this, not a provincial AGM has done this in the history of Canada. And, you know, we're a part of it. We're going to be volunteering and helping, and, you know, maybe Jay will have us on again after that AGM on Sunday. We can give an update, talk about some of the things with Danielle Smith. It's a battle, and your work has helped us formulate our arguments and our timelines in a cohesive manner so that you can do the Platonic dialectic to a degree, and at the same point in time try to change the culture war. And yeah, so this is just us wanting to encourage you and Cynthia so that you actually see a physical living demonstration of something alive and well that you didn't know existed. That's why it's the trick part of the treat this evening.
We just finished watching your Plato to Thomas More series, your 3-part, and it was like it was amazing. And I love how you're so good at explaining what it is that the pattern is throughout history, and that's what we're trying to figure out how to battle in now time. And that's why it's just I'm geeking
out. Oh, you guys watched that trilogy? That's so good. Great, thank you. No, this like made my night. This is such a honestly, thank you guys, and thank
Christmas
you,
time and Halloween.
Yeah, really.
But what this hammers home is that the true power is knowing history.
Yeah,
real history.
Yes,
not the winners win history.
Yeah,
it's
the last time is that everybody and their neighbor will agree winners write history, but then don't apply it to their everyday life.
Yeah.
So you go through with a false sense of history, and you can't argue, you can't see through things, and being exposed to people like Matt and Cynthia and Canadian Patriot and Rising Tide Foundation gives you that foundation to smell BS when it's coming, to win arguments. Most people don't know anything about history. So, I mean, that's the value here, and amazing to see a whole family in Canada being, brought through this and raised with this, and it's fantastic. I couldn't resist bringing you guys on tonight.
That's awesome. Forgive me for the stupid question. What's an AGM?
Okay, so it's known as
I was going to ask.
It's an annual general meeting, so it's for the political party, Danielle Smith and the UCP.
Okay, great.
Cool.
It's a event where you kind of vote on governance and policy, and then board members that'll hopefully, so that our premier Danielle is not surrounded by sharks. That's basically
And you have some of the biggest numbers ever for this one.
Yes,
not some of the biggest in Canadian history. There's something going on in Alberta that the media definitely does not want anybody across Canada to know. This is one of the reasons why we're very honored to be able to even have this conversation with you guys, because it would be good to know. It would be good for Canada to know that there are people trying to make that difference. And we understand that it's a grind, and we understand that it's kind of like that fool me once, shame on you, but fool me twice, shame on me. So we got to take a little bit of accountability. So we've been learning our political system. We've been getting involved, humbly eating a whole lot of you're a moron pill. And so it's like, fair enough. We didn't know what we needed to know, but once we do know, then that means you can't unlearn the knowledge. So this is why we're actually hoping that this is a beginning of a beautiful relationship, because we really do. We support your work, obviously Proof of Life with your books. Kyle here subscribes to you financially to help give us, because it's not like we can all do it individually, but
sure.
Yeah. This is us trying to do a rip. Statement about somebody that had decided to change their axioms and how they saw the world. So we were not an awake family. COVID was a heavy duty punch in the face for the clan, and And that could be a story for another time because this is Jay's show, so we're not going to monopolize it. This is
We'll get there. We're gonna stretch your story out over a year.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but it looks like honestly you guys rolled with the punches really well and made the best out of it because like it is true. It's oversaid and often abused like a crisis is an opportunity, and it's true. And often that's the oligarch say, yeah, we're gonna create a crisis and the opportunity is for us to like enslave you. But it's true in the broader sense that whenever you're shaken out of your complacency or your comfort zone, it's the time that you're gonna like really grow. So the fact that you guys really just like adapted to the new higher reality that you all discovered, latched onto, didn't look away from, and now you're obviously in a very constructive oriented place. And Alberta, I gotta say, like the quality of people that write to me from Alberta specifically is very unique. There's something really, really morally unique in all of Canada that is happening in Alberta. And it is reflected by the fact that you actually have a human being, Daniel Smith, as an elected official, which you would think would not even be possible at this moment of corruption, that a real normal human being with like even a fraction of morality could find themselves with political influence. Says something about the general culture and the general population as a whole. So yeah, definitely we should keep talking. Definitely, I'm for sure the start of a friendship. And thank you, Jason, for brokering this conversson.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you, Jay.
Absolutely.
And Matt, if you want, we'll adopt you. You come live with us.
All right. If shit gets hot and unfavorable here in Quebec, I'll keep this in mind.
Yeah, we got you.
We got you.
Cynthia and I will become a new.
Well, you need space for Susan and Grandma as well, too. Though.
Oh yeah, we'll bring.
Yes.
That's right. Where we go one, we go all, and we don't mean that through Q.
Okay, thanks for coming on, guys. We'll get you back very shortly.
Bye.
Have a fantastic show. Looking forward to the preview.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah.
All right.
That was a nice treat, dude.
Yeah, I might have been plotting in the background a little bit.
Well done.
Yeah,
well
you
done.
got to watch me.
Yeah, you got me. I did not anticipate that.
Yep.
How did you get to meet this family?
Well, that's Eye Spades in chat. And
that's the Eye Spades. Okay, that's the whole family's the Eye Spades.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I already connected you guys, and you had like a little email and stuff like that. But I went on to just find out more about them, and just thought, like, pure entertainment value. This would be fantastic. There's this whole family in Alberta, and people need to see this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So we got the At Home with the Holmes, and I'm going to bring them in every couple of weeks and check in on them, see what they're doing. And I mean, like shit. While you were away, we organized the biggest political action committee in Canada. Okay, all right, right? Yeah, okay. I made a video. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
really, really. That is honestly great soul food, and for sure, like we need more examples of just what does a healthy family look like. Not enough people have access to that, just by virtue of us living in an oligarchical society that has, by design, turned our education system inside out, turned our culture inside out. So we don't have too many examples of families that have their shit together, and can work together as like collaborators within a process of humanity. Damn,
it's rejected outright. It's not right. You can't have everybody together. They can't be in the same house. They can't be the same race. They can't be happy. They can't celebrate Christmas, or I mean, like, you can't have any of this stuff anymore. Like the genius of their maneuver is that it's not really replaced with anything, just anger. Right? Like, you don't really have new things to latch on to.
Well, I've noticed that's nothing that has substance, like one thing that I noticed, the oligarchy is good at breaking, but not at creating so much things that have like a degree of authenticity. And you can see that with like the whole wokeism inside of the movies, inside of Disney movies and everything else, right? They're good at like trashing things that are popular. But when it comes down to crunch time to now like recreate, okay, well, what culture do you want people to embrace. If you don't want fossil fuel, the fossil fuel culture of burning carbon dioxide, you don't want nation states of elected representation, because that's, you know, inclined to support or give a voice to people who are white supremacists and bigots and things. So we don't want to allow, yeah, aka farmers and truckers and regular blue collar citizens working for a living. Now, but then when it comes time to, well, then what do you want, oligarchs? What do you want, technocrats? What do you want for entertainment and for politics and and for energy needs? It's like, no, we want people to eat bugs, live devoted to windmills, have windmills supplement all of their oil, natural gas, and coal needs and nuclear needs. We want now windmills to do that job, which it will never do, and eat bugs instead of eating beef, and yeah, have a technocratic regime of anti-humanists, which can't be held accountable, that will decide for you what your kids' lives are going to be,
and be mad. And just be mad. Just know that you're wronged, and
just feel resentment.
You're just mad.
Be a generally resentful, oppressed person, without any recourse to doing anything about it except burn things down. I mean, there's not just
Well, sounds great.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, hell. So we were just talking earlier. Did you hear that Yemen declared war on Israel?
No, I missed that. That was tonight?
Yeah. That was it, right, Rain?
Yeah, apparently today. Yep.
That's expected, I guess. But yeah, that's devastatingly bad. It's like Israel. I mean, the current administration of Israel, which does not represent the Israeli people by and large. I mean, I think Netanyahu's support has fallen to like 19 or 18% of the population. There's protests, but at the same time, because of Israel's peculiar parliamentary process, they've got something like 13 different parties. All you need is like 25% of the vote to become a prime minister. But despite that, you got this radical, hardcore religious end times faction who seems to pick a fight with the entire Arab world. They're launching airstrikes into Syria. They're bombing villages in Egypt. They're attacking Lebanon. And now, it's like they're launching a strategy of a war on Hamas that involves mostly killing civilians, because they know the Israeli intelligence understands that most of Hamas is underground in the vast array of tunnel systems built up over 50, 60 years. There's the biggest like underground tunnel system that goes all the way into Egypt. It's super big. They're not above ground. So when they're launching their white phosphorus bombing campaigns onto the Gaza, they know that they're killing mostly men, like innocent victims and women and children. And they're bombing something like 24 UN aid workers got killed this week, as well as they were like manning their medical compound. They got bombed and killed. They've destroyed some major something like 34 health facilities have been destroyed. Some are some pretty significant hospitals, churches, mosques have been bombed that have been housing refugees that have had their houses destroyed, that everybody in the churches are now killed. And it's like, you know what the effects are going to be. The world's going to hate you. You're not going to get any effective. If you want to destroy Hamas, you're not going to do it that way anyway, because they're all under in the tunnels. So what do you want? And you're bombing other Arab countries around you. What do you expect?
So what do they want?
Happen?
That's the real question, right?
That's the thing. It's hard for my rational mind to wrap my mind around that degree of irrationalism.
Rain, I think, was saying earlier, you think that this is it for Gaza?
Yeah, that was kind of my thought right from the get-go, just the way things kind of played out initially. It looked like that this might be the time that Israel decides to just take it back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna get messy. There's still high density population. You got 15,000 people per square kilometer in the Gaza. It's not a lot of tree. I mean, Detroit is 5,000 people per square kilometer, so 15,000, huge. Not a lot of infrastructure, water access.
Oh, wow. We're like 10, right?
Yeah, Canada.
I think we're 10.
I think on average across Canada, if you take the uninhabited north and everything, I think it's like 3 actually. It's crazy.
15,000.
We're the ideal for a British Malthusian oligarch. We are the ideal role model for the world as far as population distribution. I think our entire
They're trying to Canadianize the world. That's what the WEF wants. They just want one Canada.
Ultimately, they do see
Lots
Canada
of banks,
as
not a lot of people.
Well, as Justin Trudeau said not that long ago, that Canada is the first world. How do you word it? The first non-nation state nation or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, they want all of the world's nations to be non-nation state nations, meaning we don't have any authentic sovereignty over anything that matters. Maybe local controls. They want what they do want, and the oligarchy, the financial oligarchy, and I know there's many oligarchies, but I think people listening know what I'm talking about with the big oligarchy, capital O, right at the top of the pyramid here. These old families, and their associated, managerial structures. What they ultimately want is a hyper decentralized system of local controls in mini micro regions, right? So they want Russia to be broken up, as Samuel Huntington and Brzezinski mapped out, around something like, at first, at least 14 micro federations, each one because Russia has something like 82 ethnic minorities. Why shouldn't each ethnic minority have their own nation? Why should they all be subservient to a broader federal Russian nation? Well, no, each one should. So that's the Balkanization idea. That's what they did for the Soviet Union, is every single microregion, Albania, Serbia, and everything else, Czechoslovakia, everything is going to be given their own little mini territory to manage, but with grievances of the other ethnic group that's right next to you that can then be, arsonists can inflame in order to create perpetual war and hostility. So you get divide to conquer. And so that's what they would like to have, is something like thousands of little micro nations, but each one would then have no power significantly they could maybe manage their local stop signs, or maybe how we want to
kind of want Rome.
They kind of want, it's exactly Rome, exactly
right.
that. Yeah, so that the only authentic power is from some supranational agency above any influence of the people who are being ruled over, who only can influence the local feudal baronial. It's feudalism, right? So you can maybe have some feudalism with like a little mini democratic aspect of it, where maybe you could have like a vote on the local feudal, like plantation lord of your sector. Maybe you'll have some mini influence, but the overall policy of how all of the sectors that you're part of are going to live their lives, no, you won't have any role to play in that. So that's what they want to get at. And
good times.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Good times. It is, and we find ourselves way deep in that.
Yep.
We are heading into an hour and a quarter. Do you want to get around to talking about our UFO doc here?
Yeah, let's introduce that topic. Sure.
Yeah. So we're right on the edge of final cut. Right now it's just a little bit of audio mixing, a couple little tweaks. This has been an adventure, this one. This is what, like, I think the third version that we really kind of got to chopping.
Well,
we did a whole first version.
Yeah, and that first version is still going to be useful, because that you're talking about the first essay that I turned into an audio, right?
That we made a video. I mean, like we got all the way through. I did that whole. It was like an
back in February.
Video.
That's right. Yeah. So originally we took an article that I had done on what do Lawrence Rockefeller, MK Ultra, and UFOs have in common more than you think. And that was an article that I had originally done in 2019. I upgraded it with some of the developments around the congressional, UFO inquiries that were going on at the beginning of this year. So I updated it a little bit, added a few elements to it, dealing with the question of Lawrence Rockefeller, specifically as somebody who is like the lesser known, but probably most important of the four big Rockefeller brothers, Nelson and what do we have? We have Nelson, we have David, both trilaterals. David is the one who founded the Trilateral Commission. I'm forgetting one, and then you have Lawrence. So he's the Nelson is the vice president under Ford.
One of the brothers,
vicious guy. Yeah, Nelson, David, I'm forgetting that other third guy, and then you have Lawrence, all grandchildren of John D. Rockefeller of Standard Oil. All of them played a key role within the Rockefeller Foundation, Rockefeller Brothers Fund, in converting the USA from being an authentic Republican nation state into an empire. So all of them played a key role in transforming the character of the USA into something that we see today as having been, this monstrosity, this perversion of itself, overseeing these unnecessary, never-ending wars in Vietnam, first in Korea, then Vietnam, then Cambodia and Laos, and then, everything else. So Lawrence Rockefeller has done that, but then he did this weird thing where as soon as the Soviet Union collapses in 1992, he decides to go and change his entire focus, and he creates the Disclosure Project. And he hires one of his devotees who's a visitor, a regular on his ranch, who's been processed through the human potential movement of the Esalen Institute and the which is tied to Tavistock itself. And all of a sudden, this disclosure movement that he's a part of, and this person that he hires is Stephen Greer, and the whole purpose is to now transform the UFO truth movement that had already been cultivated throughout the entirety of the Cold War, since UFOs were first observed back in 1947 in a big way, and transform it into more of an activist-based orientation, right? So now we don't have an enemy like the Soviet Union or the commies, who now have disintegrated. We need a new enemy. So that enemy is partially going to be terrorism. That's going to be the new replacement. But the other thing will be the preparation for the big release, of the ETs. So Lawrence Rockefeller wants to take all of these disparate organizations and now direct them towards lobbying government offices for the disclosure of UFO government relations, since especially the so-called Roswell incident back in 1947. And so what does Lawrence Rockefeller, why does he want to do this? Why did he hire Stephen Greer, that bodybuilding doctor?
He's such a weirdo.
Strange,
that
right?
documentary, and he takes people out to the desert, and he tells them that he's going to communicate with the aliens and bring the UFOs, and then they see like a glint of light in the sky, and that's him talking to the UFOs.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's such a magic trick. I mean, it's really like low level, the type of trickery that we had seen in the 19th century with some of these occult mediums that would like use Ouija boards, talk to the dead, and they'd have like little tricks to create little mini sort of proto holographic technology using like light and mirrors to and dimming the room so that nobody could see what's really going on, who's the guy in the fireplace who's like managing and working with the guy, and making the table shake. So they've been using a lot of these techniques retooled, but with a new narrative around ETs for the scientific age that's like a post-religion age. And so that article that I wrote, which went through that, some of the stuff on MK Ultra and the CIA promotion of new improved drugs that shaped so much of the baby boomer culture, as well as we went through crop circles. Anyway, we turned that into a little video, but it didn't do the job. It was just like not really quite working in a multimedia format. So we put that aside.
And it was just like the more that you thought about it, it's just the more crap came up, the further back in history it went, the more details popped up, and it's a much bigger op than it even seemed like it was at first.
Yeah, like at first it was something we were kind of just able to laugh at a little bit. We had Tom DeLonge and these like, poor cardboard cutouts selected to be the voice of the UFO truth movement. And they were, Tom DeLonge is like the former singer for Blink-182, who founded an organization with another guy named Hal Puthoff, who's much more high level. But this is a bit of a joke almost to look at it as this useful idiot is going around thinking like he's got a giant ego that makes him very useful because he thinks he's a genius who, like, uniquely of all the people in the world reading his magazines on UFOs, discovered how ancient aliens created the pyramids and interfaced with humans going back. And so he's like, I'm the one, and that's why they tap me. And he talks about how
he even says it's former CIA,
yeah,
former defense people. And but he thinks that they found him because he's the one that understands what's happening with the aliens and the UFOs and stuff. And they're just like, idiot.
Yeah.
Come here, idiot. We have, and he's like, I'm going to go on Joe Rogan. Hey. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll get to that, but you just brought up now why we had to start so much earlier. Much earlier.
Yeah. I mean, and so we pulled it a step back, and as I did a bit more work, because I was like, no, this is a lot bigger. And Cynthia and I were talking about this, looking at some of the facts, and we're like, no, this didn't just come out of a vacuum of the Cold War. This is something which is tied to something much deeper, even before the Cold War began or was artificially created. So I had written a massive 14,000 word, not massive, but I mean significant essay, a 14,000 word essay on the hidden hand behind UFOs. And I had the idea that this will be the thing that will be the basis of the new movie that we finally create. And the more I kept digging, the more I discovered, okay, this ties into JFK, what murdered JFK, how all of the people who JFK fired from the CIA were all of the key controllers of Project Blue Book, of Area 51, Alan Dulles, Richard Bissell, Charles Cabell, who JFK fired, Lyman Lemnitzer from the head of NATO, who became the head of NATO, who was formerly the head of the Joint Chiefs that JFK also fired. All of these creatures from the deep state were all high-level controllers of the creation and cultivation of the UFO mythos. And I was like, wow, this goes way, way deeper. Okay, than I realized. So we had to go, okay, well, what's the general strategy that they're all abiding by? Well, the strategy was, it's clear, it was put into motion by a high-level Fabian Society grand strategist named H.G. Wells. A lot of people know him. They've seen his book. They've either read his book, seen movies based on his books, War of the Worlds, things like that. But they don't often realize the power and importance of H.G. Wells as a creative designer of the world that we've been lived into, that we've been told to adapt into, that shaped the strategy of the next generation technocrats. And especially his War of the Worlds, to unite the world around a foreign invasion from Mars. A lot of people, we discovered that the more I looked into it, I was like, well, it wasn't just H.G. Wells with his broadcast funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, right? In New Jersey.
Was it?
Yeah, the Rockefeller Foundation. Of course, naturally. And Lawrence Rockefeller oversaw the War of the Worlds broadcast by Orson Welles back in 1938. Which had Americans believing that they were listening to the radio, and Martians were attacking, killing humans and soldiers. And so it was a stressful situation for a lot of Americans. Granted, many Americans listening thought it was like Nazis invading. World War II had just begun, but a lot thought that it was also, it was sold as a radio broadcast. So that was part of a social psychological experiment. And another one was done a few years later in Brazil, which resulted in massive riots. Something like 30 people died in Brazil when the same War of the Worlds broadcast was done then. Still funded.
When was that?
1947.
Wow.
Yeah, they did it
tried
again.
it out in a couple spots.
Yeah.
So the point that I'm really getting to, because we're gonna sneak a peek at the first episode, is that the stuff you're talking about right now, that's literally like episode 2. We're going further
what I'm
back.
saying, because you and I we did an audio version of what was to be the script, but it was still lacking. So even going through, I narrated the script, and it was going to be like a 2-hour movie, but it was still lacking the punch and the contour of like, why was this all happening now in the 20th century? It wasn't sufficient to explain where did this all come from. So Cynthia and I had a long discussion, and you made the point there was like a lot of backstory and stage setting, but not a lot of like satisfying punch in the script. So we're like, okay, if we're going to be putting this much work in it with you, we're like, we need something really solid. So Cynthia's like, I have an idea. So I was like, okay, go for it. So she went to the blackboard. She came out with a script that began the story from ancient times pre-Christian, and made the point that, look, what we're living in now is obviously part of the Great Reset agenda to create a new set of the World Economic Forum. Many people don't know. unveiled last year a project called the Great Narrative that Klaus Schwab unveiled. And part of the selling point of the Great Narrative is that the world needs new sacred stories, that the old narratives, the old stories, Judeo-Christian stories that shaped us for the past 2,000 years are obsolete. They don't apply to the fourth industrial revolution and transhumanism and these other things that is the next phase of human evolution. So we need new stories, but who's going to create the stories, and what are they going to be based about? How are they going to be the sacred? How are they going to carry this sacred power that explains the big question of the why are we, right? That Christianity and the Abrahamic faith satisfied pretty well. Like the why are we is to live in the image of God's, to live as the image of God's creations as reasonable beings doing moral acts in alignment with our reason and conscience. To make the world a better place before we die. That used to be the old obsolete reason why we are. That was satisfied by things like the Bible, right? Or the Quran or the Torah had basically these lessons imbued within it. Now, no, that's not adequate. So the new stories are going to have to involve some synthesis of the Darwinian mechanistic explanation of why life happens, which is basically what? Randomness. Random mutations make big claws, make easier way to kill your prey, beat your competitors, have more sex, eat more food, and then propagate your genetic stock into some ether. So
make big claws, have more sex. That's a T-shirt.
Yeah, just the caveman Darwinian simplistic view. But then that's not sufficient ultimately to be, because it's not sacred. Still, it doesn't satisfy that deeper spiritual need. So what do we need is aliens. That'll do it. So but the aliens themselves come about, whether you think of ourselves as being genetically spliced together by alien hybrid monkey DNA, as many people believe way back when. What's actually happening is there's a repackaging of the ancient pagan cults and the cult deities of pre-Christian, of the pre and during Christian world, of Babylon, Athens, of Greece, and of other things that were managed by a priesthood that had total geopolitical controls and also mental, spiritual controls over the people of the ancient world. This is why the oligarchy still is pissed with Christianity and as well as Judaism as monotheistic faiths that were not compatible with a polytheistic spectrum of different cults like Magna Meter and Apollo and Dionysius and Gaia. So they've been working hard. The oligarchy's been working really hard to undermine Christianity from the outside, destroying it, burning Christians, throwing them to the lions, or destroy it from the inside, right? Make it stupid, make it bigoted, destroy it by repackaging pagan occult sects and call them Christian, but actually have them other things. So you have a variety of ways to undermine and destroy the influence of Christianity and its effects in the Renaissance movements throughout the years, the Golden Renaissance of Europe, the American Revolution, pretty much everything good in Western civilization happened because of something that the oligarchy hates. Yeah. So in Cynthia's story, she starts it from that old top-down standpoint of the ancient times, and then weaves in the story of how these cults went underground, took on different forms in the Kabbalist, Templar. Well, she doesn't go into Templars, but I'm saying this now. And the different Freemasonic groups, the Rosicrucian groups in the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th centuries that led up to the creation of the Fabian Society, out of which H.G. Wells himself, a young misanthropic, brilliant misanthropic human hater, was groomed, that then brought this to a new level.
And we tie in psychoanalysis.
That's interesting. I didn't expect you to
heavy
do that.
on the psycho.
Yeah.
Really wild how far-reaching it is. We haven't rehearsed this because we were still cutting this until today. What chunk do you think we should sneak peek at?
Maybe the beginning. Skip my intro and just go straight to the first little section.
We'll watch a couple minutes at the start.
Yeah, and see where we want to.
World War II.
All right.
But in order to really get at the heart of why this is all happening at this moment in history, the first episode of our series will begin much further back in time as we review the pre-Christian world shaped as it was by pagan mystery religions managed by priesthoods of initiates. We will do this in order to better appreciate how those occult mystery religions did not disappear with the rise of Christianity as so many of us have been told, but merely went underground. This occult underground has continued throughout the centuries, operating in the shadows, orchestrating wars, coups, assassinations, and cultural warfare, leading up to the British Empire's Hellfire Club and the Society for Psychical Research of the 18th and 19th centuries. By establishing a direct connection between the ancient world and the modern era's imperial intrigues, tied to such things as Rosicrucianism, Kabbalism, Theosophy, and Freemasonic cults, it will become clear how the rebranding of ancient pagan priesthoods has unfolded into our modern times. Although it may not seem obvious at first, this exercise will be most important to understand how the UFO mythos emerged in the 20th century and the true purpose behind the revival of ancient pagan cults under a great reset today.
A perennial why has shadowed human history since the first sharp realization of our own mortality. This question has never failed to spark a search for understanding, which in turn has left in its wake various myths, rites, and representations of the divine. According to the ancient writings of Hesiod in his Theogony, in the beginning there existed only chaos. Whence arose Gaia and Eros. Then Gaia bore a being equal to herself, able to cover her entirely, starry Uranus. Gaia, with Uranus as her partner, would give birth to the 12 Titans, the first generation of Titans, 6 male and 6 female. Of these, Kronos partnered with his older sister Rhea, who then bore the first generation of Olympians, Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, Hestia, Demeter, and Hera. As the story is told by Hesiod, Uranus hated his children, the 12 Titans, and Gaia asked that her children rebel. Kronos is the only one to answer her call, and Uranus, drunken to penetrate the body of the earth, was castrated by Kronos with a sickle. From the blood that flowed upon Gaia, there came into the world the 3 Erinyes, goddesses of vengeance, the giants, and the nymphs of ash trees. From the sexual organs of Uranus thrown into the sea, Aphrodite was born. This archaic myth represents the violent separation between heaven and earth. It is a myth that has been widely disseminated and documented in various cultures, including Egypt and India. In all likelihood, Hesiod knew these Oriental traditions. His Theogony centered around the conflict between the divine generations and the struggle for universal sovereignty. Such origin myths, also known as creation myths, would serve as the foundation for the earliest cults. A cult, strictly speaking, is a particular system of religious worship, especially with reference to its rites and ceremonies. Etymologically, the word cult comes from the root of the word culture, representing the core system of beliefs and activities at the basis of a culture. Thus, every human being belongs to a cult in its most general sense, because everyone belongs to a culture. The literal and traditional meaning of the word cult is derived from the Latin cultus, meaning care or adoration. Apollo, also known as the god of the sun and of the light, was also god of archery, music, dance, truth and prophecy, healing and disease, poetry, and more. The cult of Delphi was the most prominent and influential cult in ancient Greece and had its roots in the cult of Marduk, based in Babylon, and the cult of Horus, based in Egypt. In the cult of Delphi, a priestess, who it was said was intoxicated by the gas vapors of the chasm, would be the intermediary messenger who would deliver the words of the gods in indecipherable gibberish, to which the priests of Delphi would translate for those asking for prophecy. It is said that no large political decision was ever made in Greece, most notably in Athens and Sparta, without first consulting the oracle at Delphi. In Egypt, it was the pharaoh who acted as the obligatory intermediary between the gods and humans. The hierarchical priesthood overseeing the Egyptian cult of the pharaoh's pantheon of gods, as well as the rites of initiation, was at the heart of the growth of many of the secret societies across thousands of years. The Egyptian god equivalent to Apollo was Horus. Horus, the god of kingship, healing, protection, and the sun and sky, represented the kingship itself and was seen as a protector of the pharaoh. In Babylon, the Apollo equivalent is Marduk, whose name means calf of the sun, and thus is the son of the sun. Like the cult of Apollo at Delphi and the cult of Horus in Egypt, no king of Babylon would decide on making war or peace without first consulting the oracle of the Marduk priesthood. It is thought that the temples of Apollo, Horus, and Marduk were linked under a common network, and thus controlled all intelligence and decisions for war and peace between these nodes. The priests effectively operated above all else, with no specific loyalty towards the kings they were advising and the welfare of their people. These mystery cults or mystery religions would continue to play a central role within Rome, Byzantium, and later empires, and continue in their influences to this day. The mystery cults take the form of three main branches: the Mithraic, the Orphic Apollonian, and the Dionysian mysteries. Thus, the mystery cults, which reserved their secret knowledge for initiates who would seek wisdom and power through esoteric practices and rituals, generally interpreted their scriptures allegorically to reveal so-called hidden spiritual truths that were usually known only to the higher-ranking initiates of the religion. This is what has made up the hidden hand behind the political decisions and spiritual beliefs of the day for millennia. What exactly is the occult?
And we're back.
All right, cool.
All right, cool. So we get my headies on. Wicked. So yeah, the next section we're about to get into 19th century, a little bit more modern times that we can recognize and see where this vein of knowledge and occult secrets and former kind of past religions influences people right into the 19th century to start building into the 20th century a whole system of this crazy belief structure. And I was really tempted to show the Mormon section, but I think we'll keep that as a big surprise for people who get they deserve it. It's a big payoff. The Mormon stuff is just like, what?
No, I know it's really the first UFO cult, and I didn't know that. I just thought of them as yet another denomination of Christianity for most of my life. That's how I thought of the Mormons. And then you start like looking into it a little bit, which I only did for the first time with this video that we're making. And yeah, it's a UFO cult.
I was lately tipped off because my dad, he became very Baptist Christian later in life. He resisted it most of his life, but his mom was crazy Baptist, and he always had this horrible opinion of the Mormons. And we had we were stationed in Bethesda, Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C., and just driving almost anywhere, you'd go past the giant Mormon church.
Yeah.
And almost every time I went by, I'd have something to say about them. And you always tell me about the magic underwear. They have magic underwear.
Yeah, I didn't know that until you told me. And sure enough, yeah, they actually have magic underwear.
So I always had this, like, I realized they were a little bit bonkers. And then randomly, maybe 15 years ago, I came across that cartoon that is in this documentary. Everybody just you got to watch it. It's bonkers what they actually believe. It's wild to think that spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
That some guy was just to be like, Jesus and his dad came and saw me, and then like a few years later, they're building those temples, and they're worldwide within a few decades. It's absolutely wild.
It really is. It defies reason. And so you know that there's something shadier going on behind the scenes to make this thing so bloody irrationally successful. Like, why would something so absurd become so successful so quickly? And you get the same thing as well with if you step back a little bit earlier than, and we don't go through this in our documentary, but if you step back a little bit earlier and you look in England, what was going on in 1530s, a new church, a new branch of Christianity was also being created in the form of the Anglican Church. It's absurd. It's like, here's a church that all of a sudden has the hereditary governor of the British Empire, the crown, become the essentially the Pope. The head of the church is the king or the queen, and the whole thing now is organized around a completely different structure, totally in opposition to anything that is of reasonable moral Christianity, and all done because a guy, not like, this is like on the popular record, some guy wanted to have sex with some girl he was totally enthralled with, Anne Boleyn, and wanted to like divorce Catherine of Aragon, and so he had to create his own church. Like, this is like not even a conspiracy theory. Like, this is just acknowledged, and yet people still pay this thing respect. And you're like, how could something have so much influence internationally?
One of the biggest churches in downtown Ottawa is Anglican.
Oh, Canada's got it bad. Like, yeah, well, the Anglo-Canadian church scene is completely dominated by the Anglicans, and you got their variations, a little twist on the theme in the United States as well, but it's effectively still Anglican. But you've got these weird things, these weird splintering sects that then seem to play a very interesting political role in a variety of geopolitical things that one wouldn't expect from the standpoint of the creation of Israel, which couldn't have happened were it not for the Anglican Church's particular fetish with getting all the Jews into the Holy Land. That all of a sudden became the driving force, which is why Lord Shaftesbury became the world's first political Zionist in the 1830s, proselytizing, try to create a new movement to convince all of the Jews of Europe to go and like live in the desert. Way before it was popular. Like, nobody wanted to do that. Like, they're living in pretty advanced European communities, and now you're telling them, no, you actually, what you really want, says in anti-Semitic Christian Anglican, is you want to live in the desert. That's what you want. I mean, no, maybe Florida, but no, why the desert?
Well, they good attempt in Florida anyway.
Yeah, well,
they got a good scene down there.
Yeah, they do. All that to say, and just so seeing things like that, or the growth, and we're going to deal with this in the episode 4 on the growth of the UFO cults. We'll deal with the Raelians, Scientologists, the silver shirts of America, many of these are like, the silver shirts are very closely tied to the Theosophists, which is a group we introduced in this first video. This new movement that tried to synthesize all of the different dynamics of different global religions and stories into a new unifying sort of story of all mankind. That's what Blavatsky did, and the Theosophists, right? Which also involves intercommunication with spirit beings, either from other dimensions or from like mountains in Tibet, that give you the secret hidden masters that give Blavatsky these great clairvoyant insights into whatever. So we're in a group with an excellent guy on Twitter named Wogpog,
who's really good at getting people together and organizing in a smart way. And he was through the roof that we were covering Theosophy.
Oh,
The fascination by him, and he wants to do a Twitter space soon where we uncover Theosophy, because it's one of these strange organizations that almost everyone's kind of heard about a little bit, but thought that it was maybe a fad or something, but it's had an inordinate effect on everything from governance to religion to society.
mm-hmm.
It just seemed like it was a little burst at the end of 2 centuries ago, but no, it's kind of like Ayn Rand. We're like, yeah, she wrote a book, right? But no, like the head of the Federal Reserve was in love with her and went to her parties and stuff. Like, it ended up like influencing an entire section of our future.
Yeah.
And Theosophy is like that, endlessly fascinating. And we get into that a little bit. Helena Blavatsky and a bunch of weirdos.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we're setting the stage. We're setting the stage for the next, which will be about 6 or 7 episodes, which will tell the story in a pretty comprehensive way. Each one now with that stage set as context, we'll be able to appreciate. Well, now episode 2, we'll get more into, well, what was the War of the Worlds really about? What was H.G. Wells assigned to do as far as set the tone of the New World Order? And he wrote a book called The New World Order. I think he was the first one to coin that term.
The one of the most shocking things getting involved with you and Cynthia, Rising Tide, CanadianPatriot.org, is having my mind bent by the fact that people that I thought were pretty cool and maybe kind of like anti-culture to some degree, they're total assholes. H.G. Wells, Aldous Huxley, Brave New World is supposed to be this giant warning to us, but you've got his brother, Julian, and he sets up like all these UN charter organizations that we're now actively fighting against daily for our very freedoms, set up by Julian Huxley. And who else? All these guys, they're all bastards. And I thought they were like, oh, H.G. Wells, he's like a cool futurist sci-fi writer guy, and he has his little stories, he's all right, but no, he's like New World Order, white British people forever, like, let's rule the world, let's go. And it's like they're all assholes.
They're all assholes.
So can you run us a quick outline for anyone that is tuned in and they're like, oh, they're going to show the UFO doc, and instead we ran through Greek and Sumerian mythology. What's the general outline that you have kind of saying, you and Cynthia have kind of like, episode 1, 2, 3, 4, like what's the general steps you think we're going to take to get to where we are now, and just a quick outline form of what you think like 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to be like.
Well, I don't know if my memory necessarily is, if I could totally trust my memory, but
but just your steps.
So basically the steps we're going to be hitting will be dealing with how was the 20th century, how were the potentials for the good, for a real society of justice and community and cooperation, built on a network of sovereign republics. How was that undermined by the process put into motion by H.G. Wells and what he represents? And how was the era of predictive programming put into motion that would shape and declare war on the minds of the people? So there would always be the geopolitical effort to try to control us, but the primary battleground is in the minds and how we cultivate our imagination and sense of self-identity.
So in episode 1, we really start to get that, I think, with bringing in Freud and Jung. Those are the guys that are like bridged to the
and
next century. And in the next century, we get Wells and these guys that are United Nations, New World Order.
Yeah, we're gonna reap that harvest, especially of Carl Jung is gonna play a big role in episode, I think, 3. But
is Jung a cool guy or is he a bastard? What's his deal?
No, he's hardcore occult.
Wow, it's crazy. Yeah, and I always like came up in my life. I was never a guy. I never really got into like Jung or Freud or anything. But Jung, I always thought was like interesting and like had some cool concepts. Yeah, and And I mean, I even had a book at one time, I think, like in the 80s that I was reading, and I thought at least he was kind of cool a bit. But again, another one of these bastards, I guess. Hey, fuck.
Well,
Man.
it's one of these things where he's successful not because he's telling you lies. He's successful because he's striking on something that other people are ignoring about the human condition and the so-called, basement, the thing that we don't like looking at,
Right.
that bubbles in our subconscious. And he
Just like
had
L. Ron Hubbard.
just like yeah,
That's why
these guys are.
Dianetics worked.
It has an effect.
Yeah.
These things have effects,
Yeah.
and so that's what makes them attractive and effective.
Yeah.
But it's the Trojan horses that
Yeah.
that we always have to pay attention to, because it's like, could these effects, could these true elements, or this true wider spectrum of reality be explored in a more healthy way that doesn't involve the full package that is being provided by somebody like a Freud or a Jung or a Hubbard, right?
Yeah. So sorry, I keep sidetracking you. So
it's good.
We're going from like myth and esotericism to 19th century spiritualism, and bringing back kind of the the Greek gods and the myths and the paganism, and that leads us into Huxley's and such, and H.G. Wells's and United Nations. And then where's our next step happen? Because we all grew up, Rain and I would have grown up where this was the ultimate tinfoil hat subject, right? So it seemed like UFOs were pushed off to the nether region, and now we've come to congressional hearings and the New York Times saying, hey, guess what? UFOs are real. Hey, LOL, everybody. So what's the step from H.G. Wells? Where do we get to where we are now?
Well, so I mean, we're just dealing with a little bit, like the H.G. Wells aspect is going to be maybe 5 to 6 minutes to tell his story and his push for world government, the creation of a new, social engineering master class. So he calls for that in his writing. So we're going to just explore a little bit of that, and how the three aspects is the mind, body, soul domain. So that's the three domains of the human condition: is mind, body, soul, right? The geopolitical is the aspect of the political is the physical controlling domain, right? So what physically are the mechanisms of control, the science of control to control the physical world? But then the mental world is in the domain of the education system, who could control that, and what are the thought structures that we're allowed to live in or adapt into. And then obviously the thing that's the most valuable for the oligarchy is the cultural controls. So what are the stories that create the self-image of man? Because it's our self-identity which will be shaped by the cultural stories, the sacred stories that we are given, and that we then are shaped by. That also influences our music, our arts, and other things. So that's the one that is of the most importance, and I think is the least valued by truth seekers in the anti-Great Reset world today. They don't appreciate that as being as important as it is, because we're partially incapable of looking. I think many of us who've been through it, it's very difficult to self-examine the how the very music, the movies, the video games, the other habits that have been trained into us by our culture as norms are actually keeping us enslaved and reducing our ability to form proper judgments using our sovereign minds.
These guys realized this well before we ever thought about it. They
before we were born.
Coming.
Yeah, this is the old priesthoods of the ancient world obsessed over this when they were creating their mythologies about Mars and Jupiter and Saturn and all these things. Like, these were thought through to get that effect in the ancient world, right?
So they know what kind of movies Hollywood needs to put out, what kind of games, what themes need to be covered in order to get us into a pen of sorts, a mental pen, and that's where we're at right now. I mean, it feels like that we've just been pushed into this corner where you're only allowed to think certain things. Everyone knows this. You're only allowed to say certain things. I mean, right now I'm like, is YouTube gonna cancel us for talking about this tonight? They've done an amazing job, and I see why you had to go back couple thousand years to start telling this story. So to go from here, so we've got all that. We're controlling the soul through these kind of pagan rituals and occult rituals. Where does it play in that they're like, hey, everybody, there's UFOs and what if one lands? Like, what is their angle? What are they doing with this?
Well, their angle, as we're going to come to see in a later episode, is, and this is part of why a lot of these key figures who worked with Tom DeLonge or who handled Tom DeLonge involve forces like Harold Puthoff, who's a very high level operating Thetan 7 Scientologist in the 60s and 70s, working with the CIA and NSA, who oversaw the creation of the Stargate project in the Stanford Research Institute. And he worked very closely with a lifelong ally of his, Jacques Vallée, who is on the team that created DARPANET, the first generation internet, and was a cyberneticist, a devoted cyberneticist.
And Vallée, just to interject, is the French character in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yes.
It's based entirely off of him.
Yeah, and his mentor is Alan Hynek, who was high-level CIA contractor going back to Project Blue Book, even Project Grudge and Project Sign, which we'll go into a little bit, but Project Blue Book big time. And Alan Hynek was early on a Manhattan Project, a scientist, astronomer who was assigned to play the certain role of helping to co-cultivate a new folklore for the world, because people were honestly looking out into the night sky after World War II and seeing weird things they couldn't explain as far as unidentified objects in the sky. And Air Force pilots were flying their jets, looking out of their window and seeing, hey, I don't recognize what this could be. So they were seeing something. Were they seeing extraterrestrials? Or were they seeing Russian things? Or were they seeing perhaps experimental drones or even flying saucers that were being developed by the Germans and the Italians during World War II and that were absorbed by the U.S. military-industrial complex? As you can guess from the tone of my voice, for people listening, yeah, the evidence is pointing to the last one. But then how do you then create a narrative to shape what people think they're seeing? Because one, it's a security risk if they start, talking about new experimental craft that they're seeing in the night sky or the day sky. Number two, this is advantageous. As Carl Jung, who's an advisor, a guru of Alan Dulles, Carl Jung is himself an OSS operative, an open agent working in Europe for Alan Dulles, also is a pro-Nazi occultist as well, overseeing Black Forest sun-worshipping rituals as well in Switzerland. They're beyond all that weirdness.
What is the deal with Alan Dulles? What the hell is he just literally Satan spawn? Like, this guy's involved with everything.
Yeah, him and his brother, eh?
He keeps showing. Yeah. There are two of them.
Yeah.
Is it Robert Dulles?
John Foster.
Oh, I was close.
Close. Yeah. Both banal. Yeah, I mean, John Foster.
So sorry. I'm just gonna. I'm gonna reel you in a bit.
Yeah.
What are they trying to do? So
what I didn't say.
They're like, the UFOs are here, and what's that gonna do?
I'm obviously speaking around the subject a little bit because I
want people don't want to give it all away.
Yeah. I want to have the mystique, but let me just let me pull it back to the Stanford Research Institute and the Stargate project for remote viewing and parapsychology, because that's what they were doing in the early 70s under Hal Puthoff, Jacques Vallée, Colonel John Alexander also ends up working on the project. And what they're doing is they're taking statistical quantum mechanics, which is what Einstein and Max Planck and Curie were totally in opposition to. They were saying you can't mathematize reality, which is what these statisticians and these probability theorists were all saying we had to do, who were saying there's no such thing as truth, says Niels Bohr and Heisenberg and Wolfgang Pauli and Oppenheimer. They're like, no, there's no such thing as truth. They're religiously committed to no truth existing because all we have is mathematical probability. We can know maybe where the electron might be, and we can use it to get effects that might be useful to build a bomb or other things. Because it's true, it's useful, but it's limited. But the broader implications of using a mathematization of the universe, if you think that that's all you have, then all of a sudden you can build mathematical models that describe why there might be
4 dimensions or 18 dimensions or 11 dimensions or 39 dimensions. It doesn't matter, because you can make a logically, internally consistent model for your version of string theory or the Big Bang or whatever you want that is not testable in the real world, because we can't test things that are in the 18th dimension, maybe, you know? So it becomes very detached from reality, but it works on paper. And they would use this in Stanford at the Research Institute to try to now justify why ghosts are real, why parapsychology involves, basically they tried to give a scientific veneer to a variety of things that were normally treated in occult networks alone as superstition, and they tried to amplify it. Now, Jacques Vallée introduces this thing called the interdimensional extraterrestrial hypothesis. He's the first one to introduce that in 1969, working with Puthoff, and Alan Hynek and John Alexander become devotees of this. This is what inspires a billionaire real estate speculator named Robert Bigelow to create the National Institute for Discovery Science. That involves Puthoff and Vallée and John Alexander, who are all like leading members of this thing. Set up in the Skinwalker Ranch in 1993 that they buy. They own the Skinwalker Ranch as this parapsychology thing that sees ghosts, but also ETs. And they start like redefining that, no, maybe ETs are not from our dimension, but they're from other dimensions. And then they start creating a space out of which you can now redefine the ancient sacred stories of what different tribes were seeing when they were going on a psychedelic high. Because there are certain things, it seems, that the mind is tapping into in the subconscious that come to the surface when you're on a psychedelic trip. Beings, light, things like that. So, you know, various stories, folklore, elves, fairies, everything that various cultures would talk about became, it was angels, demons, aliens. So like all of these things that these different cultures thought they were talking about with their folklore, actually, we now know, we can revisit, is aliens from other dimensions interfacing with humans. And that's what that's all we knew in our low level pre-science age. And we called them elves or something. Jesus, they're like, you know, we called him Jesus, and they said he walked on water, but in reality he was an alien, you know, things like that. So this then, again, we're going to go through this in a lot of detail, but this then is brought into the military. This oversees a reform, what's called the Revolution in Military Affairs, starting in the early 80s, where Colonel John Alexander is branched off to oversee in Fort Bragg the creation of, or the amplification, the reform, I should say, of the different psyop battalions, the 4th psyop battalion and others that start using experiments that are conducted first at the Stanford Research Institute, like trying to kill a goat by staring at it, by making its heart explode.
No, you stole my question. Is this the Men That Stare at Goats guys?
Yeah, it's the same guys. These are the guys.
Wow.
Colonel Shannon, Michael Aquino is a key guy who's the head of the Temple of Set, working with Paul Vallée, who's working. They co-write this paper called Mind Wars, which again goes through, making these super Jedi soldiers. They have the Jedi soldier program. They're using Star Wars motifs all over the place in their what they want to create is this like new Templar order of super soldiers that believe that they have supernatural powers, can like astral project, just like in Jedis, right? Can like hypnotize very effectively, can kill goats with their minds, can run through walls by aligning their particles using like drugs and transcendental meditation from Esalen. So they have these guys going into these hippie communes, right? Coming back and being deployed into the military, raised and given influence to shape military policy, to create these super soldiers who largely go on to run Desert Storm under people like General Stubblebean, who brings in, and the whole Michael Aquino, if you look at, and so we're going to go into Michael Aquino. What is the Temple of Set? What is the Satanists? What is Scientology as an outgrowth of what Aleister Crowley, openly the Beast, the Satanist, had put into motion with the Ordo Templi Orientis? L. Ron Hubbard was his devotee, his disciple, who later on took up the mantle of being the Antichrist and created his sci-fi cult of Scientology, out of which there's many figures within the Parapsychology Bureau at Stanford who are all Scientologists. Quite a few Mormons too seem to be playing a role into this, who also, it's an alien church Christian cult. So they're also like overlapping and embracing this, and these guys become what oversees the creation of the Roswell incident. You know, Paul. We're going to go through the story of Paul Benowitz and how he was or at least manipulated by people like Bill Moore, who worked with Harold Putoff and Valet as part of what
That's the
was
story of Mirage Men, which you can actually watch. Everyone can watch on.
Yeah.
Is it Netflix itself or
I don't know anymore. It's
Prime?
You can get it online.
Yeah,
Somewhere. Just Google it.
fantastic documentary. Everybody's got to see this.
Mm.
Where they fully, by now it's been long enough, they're interviewing the actual defense and intelligence operatives that fed stories of UFOs in Roswell and Area 51 and all this stuff to the guy who was the lead kind of guy for organizing UFO cons and all this stuff for years, eventually driving him crazy, and he killed himself.
I don't think he killed himself, but he became a recluse, and he was committed.
Oh, did he?
I thought he did. He had to be committed to an asylum, and eventually he became a recluse. But
okay. I guess I wrote that part in my mind, but I'm kind of a dramatic person. But it's out there in the open. A lot of the best UFO shit over the years was made up by the intelligence agencies and being actively fed under an active program to the leaders in what were supposed to be the counterculture.
Yep.
Which is a reminder to, keep it frosty for all of us on kind of the counterculture side right now.
Mm-hmm.
There might be such activities going on right now.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And we're going to find one thing as well that's going to play a role in, I think, episode 3 will be MK Ultra, and how all of these key figures who are overseeing the creation and cultivation of the UFO story from the top in intelligence agencies were the same operatives overseeing the creation and deployment of MK Ultra,
right,
from the very earliest phases. So we're going to go through some of those characters. Who were they? What were they doing? Why were they doing it? What was MK Ultra? What was the normalization of drugs in the baby boomer culture? How did this get infused with science? How did this brainwash the military as well as the scientific leadership of the Western world? And how did this all play in convergently into what is effectively this grand unveil using holograms, a variety of other psyops that's being set into motion under crisis conditions, whereby some intergalactic phenomenon will be presented to a very traumatized world in despair. That will then be right emotionally to a new story for themselves.
Now that's what I was asking.
Yeah,
I'd like to weigh in on it by way of video, if you don't mind. We'll just watch another little clip that sums it all up for me. What they're trying to do and what their hopeful result is when they reveal their little hologram. Oh, I gotta play it. One sec. So that's your average mainstream media leftist, that girl. All these people on the rooftop.
You must leave now.
Take that, lefties.
Oh my god. Oh shit.
Seriously though, like that's what it's going to be. They're going to be like all these Ukraine flag idiots are going to show up for that, and they're going to, the aliens are going to show us the way, And
Is that from Independence Day?
yeah, man,
Oh man, I forgot about that. That's
that is
so
one of
messed
the
up.
best movies ever made.
I gotta rewatch that.
Oh yeah, dude. Save it. My next trip out to the Montreal encampment.
All right, yeah,
We
let's do
watched
it.
Star Trek Troopers last time.
Oh yeah, I rewatched
Yeah.
that too. It's actually not terrible either. It's more profound
No.
than I remembered it when I was
Yeah,
a
and we
teenager.
were actually
in
fishing for the philosophical undertones when we watched it, which
yeah.
is the correct way to watch it, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, Independence Day, that thing's a beast. That was a hell of a movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but that sums it up for me. A bunch of idiots are going to be like, "Oh, they're here. The visitors are here. They're going to show us the way. Everything's going to be incredible. All we have to do is give in to the." And they're going to come off and say, "All you need is one world governance
Mhm.
and vaccination." You know,
Yeah.
that is what saved us on SETI Alpha 5.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that's my take on it. But what do I know, right? I'm going to learn editing these videos. I might have a different take on it by the end.
No, probably not.
Yeah,
it's pretty much. I'm thinking something on those similar lines. I mean, we don't know exactly the details, and I don't think the oligarchy knows exactly the details that it's going to take. Whether it's going to be like some benevolent force that'll come in to save us, or something that's going to be scary that we have to unify ourselves around some world government to protect ourselves from. I don't know if they're
and as
fully
you're always
decided on
pointing
that.
out, there is no one oligarchy. There's lots of factions.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
They have lots of plans. There's some of them jump the line a bit, which might have happened with COVID and might happen with the alien thing. Who knows, right?
Well,
And
it's definitely happening with the whole, let's go for full blown war with Russia and China using
definitely working.
Yeah, and you see that there's like not a coherence within the various Western oligarchical factions. In some cases, they've got certain of their emissaries, their proxy auxiliaries that they deploy out to try to do something that seems kind of sane as far as diffusing the World War III tension. And then you have other factions that are like doubling down on their neocon, rule in hell or serve in heaven, Hobbesian logic. They're not compatible, but they're ultimately neither one is good. But they're breaking in the tension of like there's a reality that is imposing itself onto the very oligarchy as well that they didn't prepare for within their script that looked so good when H.G. Wells wrote the Open Conspiracy back in 1931. It looks so nice and clean and crisp. And then like reality seems to defy this like whiteboard beautiful formality that they're committed to, and they don't know how
it
to
was like Daddy
readapt.
Holmes said before, you can ignore reality all you want, but not the consequences.
That's beautifully said.
Yeah.
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 That was brilliant.
Well, Matt, I think we're ready to call it.
Sweet.
Any parting thoughts on this All Hallows Eve?
Nah, I'm good. It's not. We survived through All Hallows Eve now, so it's
yeah. And well, thanks
for me at least. I made it through. You're still in Hallows Eve time, so there's still 3 hours or 2 hours 45 minutes for you for things to go really weird. But for me, I'm out of it. I'm good.
Well, what would be weird would be getting a trick or treater. That would be weird.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, neighbors are all like miles apart up here. Thanks for staying up so late.
I'm a night owl, man. It's fine.
Yeah, and it makes it spookier.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thanks so much. And so I think within about 24 hours, you're going to have a movie to launch.
Yeah. So everyone watching, keep your mind set, keep your watches set to 24 hours from now. Go to CanadianPatriot.org or RisingTideFoundation.net and get ready to expand your mind.
You bet. Everybody can scan the code up here. That'll take you right to the support page. And throw a few bucks in. It's going to help us make any films out of Matt and Cynthia's work. If you're into it, then just hold that phone up, scan there. Or, I know it's a lot of our audience, they don't like using QR codes. That's how paranoid we're getting. CanadianPatriot.org. Just head there, and then the support link is right there, and donate, and it goes directly to getting these films done. because the work is intense and the work is expensive.
Mhm.
Likewise, up top left is our QR code. You can get in $4 a month, and you can get exclusive access to clips. You can get exclusive access to our guests, and we got to support each other, everybody. And so let's get it. Let's spread it. Matt, thank you for joining us. We'll sign you off here.
Amen. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys.
You bet.
Thanks,
All right, till the next one. Bye.
You too. Bye bye.
Take care.
All right, another episode where we didn't really have to talk much.
Yeah, well, thank you.
The best thing about having Matt on is just sit back. It's like a lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was good. That was that looks like that's going to be a really good documentary.
It does, and I got to say, like, we didn't cover it much, but I was resistant at first. I thought it was overly esoteric, and that everybody be just like, a UFO documentary. All right, let's look at flying saucers and Close Encounters of the Third Kind and stuff, and we're all here talking about Zeus and Demeter and Sumeria and stuff. But as we were covering tonight, kind of got to cover it because this was important.
Yeah.
Those two are uncovering the religion that these assholes that are trying to control us, that I think they're discovering the religion.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously going with his angle of the fact that the UFOs are probably a man-made construction to control us in the end, ultimately, right? So yeah,
Pretty much.
If that's where you're going to go, then yeah, you got to start at the beginning and go through it and
yeah,
show the history of all that, so everybody can understand, how he arrives at that theory.
but we might end up with kind of a database to construct what the fuck these assholes believe and what they pray to at night. I've always suspected they have their own religion.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way.
Yeah.
But
they see themselves as separate from us.
Mm-hmm.
So they must have their own belief system, and I think these two are on the edge of finding it.
Right. Yeah. No, very interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sufficiently spooked out. Shall we call it for the night?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. I think we've done a good job, man. 2 hours, 20 minutes. Let's spread it. Let's fucking go.
Good. All right,
and then, we'll be back soon with more videos, more guests, more entertaining excellence.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you bet. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Much love.
Good night, everybody.
You too.